Okay. Okay, everybody, welcome to the council meeting on the Thursday, the 1st of September. The first item on the agenda is going to be apologies for absence.
Thank you, Presiding Member. I have apologies from Councillors Paxton Hood-Williams, Matthew Jones, Sarah Keaton, Richard Lewis, Kelly Roberts, Andrew Stevens and Will Thomas.
Thank you.
That was Mike Day and Graham Thomas. Any others?
Penny Mathis up there.
Can you use your mic? Yvonne Jardine, that was. Thank you. Any others? No. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. The next item is disclosures of personal and prejudicial interests. I'll hand you over to Tracy Meredith.
Thank you, Presiding Member. I circulated an email yesterday. There are a number of annual reports. I don't think you have an interest just because you are a member of one of those committees. Also, there is one question, which I think it's question 3, which does contain a number of outside bodies. Again, I don't think you have an interest just because you are a member of one of those outside bodies or you are perhaps employed by one of those bodies. So in all, I'm not anticipating any declarations of interest tonight.
Thank you, Tracy. Just to remind you, if there are interested, you must disclose them verbally and add to the declaration of interest sheet. Okay, thank you. The next item is the minutes to approve and sign, and that's from pages 1 through to 13. I'll go through them first for accuracy. Okay, before I go, it's amendments to the minutes. So it's item 3 on the minutes from the 7th of July 2022. Minute 32, membership of committees. Resolution 3 should be amended to read, add councillors S.A. Joy. And then item 3 in the minutes again, it's minute 33, councillors' questions. Question 7 needs to be amended slightly to reflect that Councillor L.R. Jones asked for wood skips to be placed at Gosainen as well as at Klein, and the minute should read, Councillor L.R. Jones asked if wood skips could be placed at Klein Civic Amenity Site and Gosainen Civic Amenity Site prior to be taken to the baling plant at Llansamlet. This approach would reduce the need for vehicles to travel to Llansamlet, thereby reducing greenhouse gases. The Cabinet Member for Community stated that a written response would be provided. That's the end of the announcement. Okay, so go back to the minutes, and that's pages 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11. Can somebody approve? Everybody approve? No, thank you. Everybody in favour? Yep, thank you. Go back to them then. It's in the, I didn't know what's the page 12 and page 13. Oh, sorry. There's another one on page 12 and 13. And 14 is it? Yeah, it's from 13 up to 17. Great. Thank you. Okie doke. The next item is written responses to questions asked at the last ordinary meeting of council, and that's on pages 14 to 17. Then we have the announcements of the presiding member. I have got a number of announcements tonight. The first one, unfortunately, is condolences. Anna Holland, daughter of Councillor Victoria Holland. It's with sadness that I refer to the recent unexpected death of Anna Holland, daughter of Councillor Victoria Holland. The next one is Honorary Alderman, former Councillor and former Lord Mayor June Stanton. It was sadness that I refer to the recent death of Honorary Alderman and former Councillor and former Lord Mayor June Stanton. June represented the Sketty ward for approximately 29 years, serving Swansea City Council from the 5th of May 1988 through to 31st of March 1996, West Glamorgan County Council from the 4th of May 1989 to the 31st of March 1996, and the City and County of Swansea from the 4th of May 1995 to the 4th of May 2017. June was Lord Mayor 2013-2014 and became an Honorary Alderman on the 24th of August 2017. And it is with sadness that I refer to the death of former Councillor Ron Thomas. Ron represented the Gowden ward for approximately 13 years, serving the City and County of Swansea from the 4th of May 1995 to the 1st of May 2008. The next is with sadness that I refer to the recent death of the former Chief Executive of Swansea City Council, Andrew Bossum. And could you please remain seated in silence as a mark of sympathy and respect? Thank you. On a more positive note, I've got some Green Flag Community Awards. I'm delighted to announce that the Friends of May Hill, Washing Lake and Community Food Garden have yet again received the Green Flag Community Award. This is the 4th year in a row that they have won it. I'd also like to pay tribute to and to thank all volunteers involved with the 14 parks or green smaller community-based gardens and green spaces in Swansea. Those areas are Cadler Heath Local Nature Reserve, Clydach Community Garden, Coedbach Park, Pontedillas, Croes Community Woodland, Graft, a soil-based syllabus, Llys Nini, Mayhill Washing Lake and Community Food Garden, Pennard Garden Society Wellness Garden, Polly's Park, Rose Hill Quarry Park, St Maddox Centre, Swansea Canal, Swansea Community Farm Swansea, Swansea Vale Nature Service, and the work of these volunteers is invaluable to all its citizens. I'd like to welcome a young Ukrainian student who is with us tonight. He's in the public gallery, Makary Pokotilo, who is sitting in the gallery. He has completed his secondary education in Ukraine, but like so many others, was unable to stay at home. Makary is hoping to study politics here in Wales. He has come to Swansea to observe our meetings and see how things are done. So please be on your best behaviour tonight. Okay? Welcome, Makary. Thank you. Welcome. Okay, the other one is item 12 is a notice of motion, the funding formulas. Councillor John Curtis, Mike Lewis, W.G. Lewis, N.L. Matthews, K.M. Roberts and L. Walton to be added to the list of those submitting the notice of motion. That's the end of my announcements. Thank you. Okay, the next item is the announcements of the Leader of the Council. Over to you, Councillor Stewart.
Thank you, Chair. My first is just to advise members that I have asked Democratic Services to circulate some minor amendments to the Cabinet portfolios. These are just clarifications, in essence, in terms of responsibilities and accountabilities for Cabinet. So a revised slide deck will be circulated following the meeting, but they are minor changes. Very, very pleased to advise members that Swansea Council is shortlisted in the Apse Public Service Excellence Awards in 7 categories this year. That is the Best Workforce Initiative, Best Housing Regeneration New Build Initiative, Best Commercialisation and Entrepreneurship Initiative, One Person's Rubbish is Another's Treasure, Swansea Market at the Heart of the City Centre and Local Economy, the Best Service Team Housing Construction and Building Services, Best Services Team Street Cleansing and Street Scene Public Realm, and Best Service Team Cemetery and Crematorium Service. I think this it's an honour to be nominated in these categories, but to be nominated in so many is a true reflection of the excellent work that goes on by our excellent staff day in, day out. And you'll also be aware that we are also nominated for Council of the Year again this year, which we have been in the past. And fingers crossed with the awards being held in Swansea next week, that we get that extra push to get over the line. And I think it's great that we've been nominated in so many categories and for Council of the Year, but it will be even better to win in those categories. In addition to that, Chair, I can also confirm that we've been nominated and shortlisted for City of the Year in the very prominent Estates Gazette Awards 2022. And again, we will know the result of that on the 2nd of November this year. But again, it's an honour to be one of only 4 cities across the UK shortlisted for that award. Also, I wanted to pay tribute to the excellent work undertaken for the delivery of the Volvo 2022 World Triathlon Para-Series event and the Ironman 70.3. Those events, I think, were met with a little bit of controversy. I think it's fair to say. But I think the reality is when people have seen how excellently the events were organised and how our fantastic events team and officers worked with the organisers to make sure the disruption was to a minimum, I think the economic benefit and the tourism benefit that these events bring to Swansea is something that we should continue to support. And we will continue to work with communities to make sure we minimise wherever possible the impacts. But I would much prefer events of this nature to take place in Swansea than not take place in Swansea. And I think it's absolutely commend the work that has been done. And again, commendment to Councillor Francis Davis for leading on those initiatives. I also wanted to give a quick update to members on the Dragon Energy Island Tidal Lagoon. I know we've got a question on it later, but just to say we have been busy over the summer supporting the work of DST in their negotiations with Associated British Ports in terms of land acquisition. They now have informed us that they believe that they have all of their funders in place. They've shared with us who their potential commercial partners are and who their consortium partners are. Again, it's important that this significant energy project continues to make progress. As you'll know, I was, as others were, very, very disappointed when the UK government failed to support the original Tidal Lagoon proposal. And I think given the cost of living crisis and where the country now finds itself, it's shown to be such a terrible decision not to support that. This proposal, as you will be aware, does not require UK government financial support or permission, and therefore I think it's got an even better chance of succeeding. So again, I will return to give Council a further update on the Dragon Energy Island Tidal Lagoon later in the year. And I think that, Chair, is the conclusion of my announcements for today.
Thank you, Councillor Stewart. The next is public questions. There aren't any. And then I'd like to call on Paula. Sorry, just get my notes out. Paula O'Connor to give an update on the annual report of the Audit Committee, please. Thank you, Paula. Is she online? Paula online, Hugh? No. Okay. We'll move on to the next item then, and that's the Democratic Services Committee Annual Report. And I'd like to call on Councillor Linda James to give the report, please.
I believe, sorry, I found it now. I believe the report is only for noting and there is no vote on it. So I don't intend to go into anything that's in the report. It's fairly simple. If there's any queries, we will attempt to answer them. I was going to say, if I can't, there's a man that can, but he's disappeared.
Thank you,
Further?
councillor James.
Nope, then we're.
Yeah, can I just thank Councillor for the report, much appreciated, and a lot of work, but really appreciated. Thank you.
Pleasure. I think we'll move on.
Sorry, the next item is the scrutiny annual report. Again, is for noting. And I'd like to call on councillor Roberts to thank the chair. Peter. Oh, Peter. Sorry, Peter.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Thank you, Chair. The report is in front of you. I'm going to assume you've all read it, and I'm happy to answer any questions. It's for information, so any questions I'm happy to answer.
Yeah, Chair, just to formally thank Councillor Black and all the members of the Scrutiny Committee, Programme Committee, for their continuing work on undertaking excellent scrutiny.
Sorry.
Sorry, presiding member, if you'd just indulge me, we have tried to get hold of the chair of the Governance and Audit Committee. We can't get hold of her, and neither the vice chair isn't here. So what I would suggest, if council agrees to defer this particular item to the next council meeting. Are you all agreed to that? Thank you.
Thank you, Tracy. Okay, we move on then to councillors' questions. And the first question is from councillor Mary Jones, Sam Bennett and Jeff Jones.
Thank you, Presiding Member. Came round a bit quick this time. Not normally this swift coming to questions. Thank you very much, the Cabinet Member, for the response. And yes, it looks, the city centre does look a little cleaner and tidier. But can I ask if the Cabinet Member could pass on that they pay more attention to Wine Street and the environs? Because even I had another look on Tuesday, and when you go through Salubrious Passage, especially in the passage itself and all around there, it isn't a very pleasant experience. When I first went to the city centre, I wasn't going to look for trouble, I have to admit. I was going to see the new work in Wine Street, and it was the week of the graduation, and there were an awful lot of people around. And I have to say, it was really, really dirty and untidy, and so was the area around the arena and the LC, but it has been cleared. So if you can pay more attention, perhaps, to Wine Street area, the curbstones around the nice new flower gardens and trees and places like that. And also if something can be done about the cardboard refuse, because it's absolutely piled high and then somebody kicks it and it goes everywhere. I know it's not the responsibility of the council. Can we work, please, with the businesses to try and make it look a far more attractive place, because that is the area that we are regenerating. Thank you.
Councillor Anderson.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I listened to your response, your questions there, no problem. But can I say, Presiding Member, I am extremely proud of our female and male operatives that keep our city centre clean. Obviously, this might have been an oversight on, or it might have been busy on that particular time we went, but I will take your points and considerations and take it back to officers. Thank you.
Okay, the next is the. Sorry, Jeff Jones. Sorry, councillor Jeff Jones. Do you want to come in first, Rob?
Yeah, Chair, just to add to what Councillor Anderson said, can I first commend? Sorry, I was going to answer your point first. Yeah, sorry. No, I'd like to commend Councillor Anderson for the work he's done since taking over as Cabinet Member. I think he's been absolutely responsive to members in terms of any issues raised, and he's done an absolutely fantastic job. In terms of the lanes, that's the point I was going to come in on, was we have a programme that we're looking at the moment as part of the further redevelopment around Wine Street, Castle Gardens, to look at the connectivity into Wine Street and the alleyways. And we're working with BID to see how we can have some funky enhancements to the alleyways to make them more inviting places and safe places, or where people feel safer as they walk in. And just a reminder, really, that you mentioned cardboard. We know that commercial waste is not something that we are bound to collect. It's a commercial service offered by a number of operators. But I know Councillor Anderson and others are having conversations with businesses to see if we can try and get everybody to abide by the rules and that they don't leave rubbish out on the street far in advance of when the collections take place.
Thank you, councillor Stewart. Councillor Jeff Jones.
Yes, thank you, Presiding Member, and thanks to the information so far. Really starting off, I accompanied Mary actually, around parts of Swansea. Cleanliness is an important part affecting the impression, not only of potential investors, but also residents and so on. And yes, there was a problem, especially around Wine Street. But can I ask the Cabinet Member, I can remember, many years ago that we used to have quite a lot of consultations actually on cleanliness and so on. Is it possible to actually have, these consultations returned, independent, of course, actually on the subject of cleanliness?
Johnson.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Jeff Jones. What are you referring to? Consultation with who and when?
I can remember, Councillor Anderson, it was when we were in power, really. There were consultations that were actually carried out. I'm not quite sure who they were carried out by. I don't know if it was the members of the public, although the members of the public, of course, were consulted and actually, added to the consultation. I got a feeling, actually, it was some sort of private firms at the end of the day. This is going back to, well, I actually came on the council in 2008, and I know they were quite prominent around that time.
Yeah, okay, thank you. But it's a little bit before my time, 2008, and Lib Dems were in power in 2008. But I can certainly take that back to officers, which I'm sure are still employed by the city and county to have a look at, and I'll get back to you with a written response.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Andrew Lewis.
Thank you, Presiding Member. I think it's only fair of me to point out that there is a reason why our cleansing team have been shortlisted for an Apse award. Just to make that point again.
Okay, move on. There's nobody else now. Move on to question 2 then, and it's from Councillor Peter May.
Thank you, Presiding Member. Apologies to everybody for the lack of picture. Bad signal from where I'm speaking from. Thank first of all the Cabinet Member for a very comprehensive answer, and obviously, to reiterate my group's support for the policy of playgrounds. We're just the purpose of this questioning is just to look over safeguarding what is going to be a very worthwhile investment for the city, which we support. We will be making a bid to the ERF for some replacement equipment for Cumdonkin. We've spoken with officers. I've taken one Cabinet Member's advice in the press to do that. It seems that the criteria for the play fund was a red or an amber inspection, I think based in October 21. Please correct me if I'm wrong. Cumdonkin Park and possibly other parks this might affect in the future came out green in that inspection, so it wouldn't have qualified for the main play fund because it was considered to have been in good order. So the question really is will there be another opportunity to do an assessment on playgrounds so that they actually fall into the category of qualifying for the play fund, or would it be best to carry on for playgrounds that came out green but might have deteriorated in the future to go down the ERF route to apply for funding? Thanks.
Councillor Francis Davis.
This council have gone on record as saying that we will upgrade every single playground in the council's ownership into a green standard. By the end of the financial year 23-24, because we're doing so much, there will be £5 million invested in play areas in the city and county of Swansea. This is more than any council in Wales have actually put in. If people go around and look at the play areas, I think they will all be actually, even the opposition would be complimentary about the amount of playgrounds that we've upgraded, and there's lots more to come, including Cumdonkin Park. I know you like Cumdonkin Park, Peter, in your ward. Yeah, I know you took a a lot of children there. I made sure that the press were there to have a photograph of children pointing at the actual piece of equipment that you refer to in this question. Well, I had a phone call from the journalist and asked him, I don't know why he phoned you up unless you were going to repair it. And the journalist said, no, we're not repairing it. The answer is in the question here, and I would have thought that you would have waited for that rather than try and make some cheap political capital out of a piece of equipment that wear and tear are taken away. Now, we have a statutory duty to ensure that we always inspect annually our play equipment. In fact, the officers inspect them every 6 months. And if they, in the past, have been not up to standard, unfortunately, they were taken out, not replaced, because year on year of the austerity budgets, the money was not there to replace. And I actually looked at when you were in power, Councillor May, how much you invested over the period from 2004 to 2012. I think it was something like £1.8 million. Most of that in Cumdonkin Park. Now we understand why. They would lots of time of austerity. So £5 million is being invested right across at every play area, irrespective of where it is. And it will be replaced there. You don't need to make an ERF bid because we believe in the right of the child, and every child have a right to access play equipment. So it will be replaced. And you didn't need the children pointing at it with you in the picture to try and get some cheap political capital from it. And I know other councillors have not done that. They've actually asked for play equipment. The capacity is not there to be able to do everyone straight away. There's a rolling programme, but I'm sure most of you have seen the difference already. And if you haven't seen it, talk to the children because they will tell you. I heard one child say, look at that, it's better than Butlins. And that was probably the best answer I could hear from a child when he was there with his grandfather.
Councillor Phillips, you put your hand up.
Thank you, Chairman. I wonder whether the Cabinet member would agree that it's a bit rich for the leader of the Uplands Party to be complaining about the state of possibly the best maintained and looked after park in the city, which he and his constituents get the benefit of without contributing one single penny from any of their community budgets. This is paid for by the council. The park is paid for by the rates of all the people in Swansea, yet he complains about a swing that wears out. I think actually, the Cabinet member would agree that Councillor May's questions and concerns should be more about the poorer areas of this city and the facilities that they've got, rather than complaining about how theirs aren't as good as they might have been.
Councillor Rice?
I would agree that in the poorer areas, I think the children need it perhaps more than some other areas, but I actually believe it's the right of every child to access this equipment, whether they go into the beautiful park in Underhill Park, whether they go into Clydach, whether they go into down in Gosain into the play areas there. One in Gowerton, I don't think there was enough put into that, but we are going to put more money into Gowerton to make sure that that's up to standard as well. Some people, every councillor was asked in the beginning, what did they want to do? It was fair and equitable. Well, it wasn't really fair and equitable. Every ward had 30,000, so single member wards, I suppose, had more money retrospectively to invest, and we asked 20% from their community budget to put into it. Some put more, some didn't. But we have looked at it fairly now to make sure that every play area will be upgraded to make sure that our children get that access to that play. And I think it's probably been, for myself, one of the most rewarding projects that I've carried out on this council. And and with the help of Councillor Andrew Stevens, we talked to every one of you. Well, everyone was invited to a meeting. Not everybody could make it. Might have been the holidays. But I think that access to good play for children. There was a report out last week that some of the children in Wales are the least active. But we want to make sure that children are active and get that opportunity for play.
Thank you. Councillor Stewart-Rice.
Thank you. Can the Cabinet member assure me and the members here as well that he'll examine the standard of the inspection reports that we have on playgrounds to ensure that they're robust and that we don't have a situation where play equipment passes and then fails quite quickly afterwards?
I trust my officers to make sure that when they inspect it, on the day of inspection, they found it to be robust and that they were checked. I think the day that Councillor Councillor Peter May, Councillor Peter May was in there. He was with lots of children. I think he got a play scheme on in Brindle Park. Then he went up to Cwmdonkin Park. There was a lot of wear and tear during that time. During COVID, there's been lots of wear and tear. There's, you know, your car can pass an MOT one day and a week later something goes wrong. Now, when the person's inspecting it, it's not their fault.
Thank you, Councillor Davis. The next is a question from Councillor Chris Evans.
Thank you, Presiding Officer, and thank you for the response. I do note that funding issues for green projects is going to be the biggest issue that we have. With both candidates for Prime Minister in Westminster currently trying to roll back on previous green promises, how confident are we that we're going to get funding from Westminster?
That's a very interesting question, and I thank the councillor for it. The honest answer is I have very little confidence in either potential government leader and Prime Minister. Unfortunately, I wish that I could say differently, because the councils, as I can see it, and local authorities are the perfect delivery vehicle in terms of any grants to help privately owned houses to be more energy efficient, and never has there been a more important time to do that with the cost of energy crisis. The removal of many subsidies, the removal of feed-in tariffs didn't have the anticipated impact it was promised to have, which was to bring the cost of products down. All it's done is remove people's affordability of being able to put those renewable energies and solar on roofs, for example. So very little confidence. Unfortunately, the UK government, I fear, will continue to invest in nuclear energy, which I think is absolutely the wrong thing to do. And what they should be doing is investing in projects like the Blue Eden project, like offshore wind, like solar farms, and enable us to be able to do our job in helping the people of Swansea. And we will continue as a council to lobby UK government. But my confidence levels are on the floor, I'm afraid, Presiding Member, but I'm grateful for the question.
Thank you, Councillor Lewis. Move on. There's no get there, isn't it? Move on to question 4 then, and that's from Councillor Lyndon Jones.
Thank you, Presiding Member. Yeah, thank you to the leader for the response. I think it's really important that Swansea becomes a free port. And I've certainly raised it up the line as well, because I think it really is important. And he and I have had a conversation about, what that should look like. And I've certainly passed that along. I think it's also important that the MPs in Swansea and Gower are involved with that and really are helping to drive that forward. Because I know that I'm told there could be 2 free ports in Wales, and I know that the member of Parliament for Ynys Môn is working very hard. She's there doing stuff with the council, doing stuff with business to try and drum up support for that free port. And we, from their point of view, they need to be doing that for us as well, and members of the Senedd, because it is so important that Swansea becomes a free port, because that will really enhance what we're trying to achieve.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Leader.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I don't think there's a question in there, particularly. It was a statement, but I do share Councillor Jones's ambition for free ports in Wales. Personally, I think the difficulty we have at the moment is that the UK government's position on this and the detail around it is unhelpfully unclear. Or limiting Wales to just 2 free ports, again, is restrictive. I think one of the worst things that could happen for Swansea or any other part of Wales would be on the border of a free port, because that is a significant economic disadvantage. Now, again, if you dig into the rules that have been set by UK government, you will see that free ports can only cover a very limited area, some 45 miles or so, 45 kilometres. It's really restrictive. I would like personally to see the whole of the South Wales corridor be a free port area to allow the whole of the South Wales economy to go forward with the same advantages that have been offered to many areas in England. But of course, free ports are not new. They could have been done while we were in the European Union, which was obviously a lie peddled at the time when the European debate was going on. But I think we have to also be cautious, because when you dig into the criteria that have been set by the UK government, it is not easy for Swansea to achieve free port status given the criteria that has been laid down. In fact, we are significantly disadvantaged by the rules set by the UK government. But we will work with our regional partners to see what we can do to try and work within the rules that have been set.
Thank you, Leader. Councillor Holly.
Thank you, Presiding Member, and thank you for the question. It's quite apt as the bidding process opened today. As Business Insider said, can I reinforce a lot of what the leader has said? The initial ones in the UK were opened in the 1980s by Margaret Thatcher, and one of them was Cardiff, and successful. They put a great big barrage across it and called it Cardiff Bay. What are free ports? You know, if you go back in history, free ports are the Venice, the Genoas, where they were open for trade and what have you. The largest ones, Dubai, and places of that nature, and Rotterdam, where the free port in Rotterdam is based on the oil basis. So what are we going to have as a free port? When the Chancellor announced this idea of free ports, he named a number of places: East Midlands Airport, Felixstowe, Harwich, Humber. These are major ports in the UK. Why do they need to be free ports? What is a free port? It's just an area which is tax-free. Or is it an election gimmick? I, like the leader, I'm very concerned about the fact that we had a free port up the river, up the bay, up the coast in Cardiff. Not very successful. So you ask yourself now, why go for this now? What advantages is it? I would like to see one. I would like to see it operating, but I want to see it operating in a way that it would benefit the local communities and not international trade, which I have a fear that this may well be the case. In many other parts of the world where they had free ports, there was always an insistence that there was a percentage of income going towards the local community, and that happened in Dubai, but they didn't really pay a lot of tax there.
Chairman, are we going to get to a question at some point?
Yeah, if you listen, I'll give you a question. The reality is, the leader says about the way, the criteria that the UK government and the Welsh government are going to work to. What I would like, if it's possible, if the leader can do, if he can get hold of that criteria and we can have a discussion on it in some form of a seminar, because the idea of a free port is a good one, but I think people need to understand what it is. So the question, Councillor Phillips, is will the leader facilitate some sort of discussion so that we can all understand what the UK government now wants as a free port? Thank you.
Chair, in terms of the criteria, it's already published online. It's already out there so people can see it. If, having read the criteria, there are questions, more than happy to take them. And if members do want a seminar, I'm sure that can be arranged. But as I said, that is in the public domain already. I share the concerns that the Leader of the Opposition has also raised about how this will be applied. I have to say the UK government does not have a good track record at the present time of making transparent, fair decisions. If you look at levelling up bids and others, they are not done in a way that gives me confidence that this process, regardless of how good a bid may be, that we would end up being successful. And I'm afraid we will see which of the two beauty contests win the Prime Ministership in the next few days, but I don't have confidence that either of them will do anything good for Wales.
Councillor Rice.
Thank you. I would just ask that maybe the Leader of the Opposition and the Leader have a look at the success of Middlesbrough and what's happening in Middlesbrough at the moment, because it's not dissimilar to Swansea. The question I was coming to lead to is to ask the Leader that clearly we're working with regional partners on the potential bid, including Newport Talbot and other closer regional partners as well. Has the Leader and the discussions that have happened so far taken into account the Wales vision from AB Ports, which looks at a circular economy and being able to reduce waste and give a green boost to Wales's future?
The answer to that is yes. And again, what I don't want to do is to go into the details of any bids, because obviously this is a competitive process. But certainly you would expect any bids that include the use of ports in our region would include the port owners and operators.
Thank you, Leader. The next question is from Councillor Lyndon Jones again, please.
I was just going to come back on one point there, is the fact that I hope that the council are engaging with the MPs, because they can be the very ones knocking on the door of ministers, because they're in the same building. That's vitally important, and also MSs. And I think really you need to send a positive message out, because I heard quite a bit of negativity there between the two of you, between yourself and Councillor Holly. And really, if we are going to be positive about getting it, look what they're doing on Anglesey and Ynys and really with the council, the Member of Parliament, really pushing ahead there and with that positive message. And I think the negativity that we heard here tonight is not good news.
Apologies for that, Councillor Jones. I think my negativity comes from another story in the paper yesterday where ex-Welsh Secretary Alan Kens was boasting about the fact that he advised the Prime Minister to lie to the people of Wales in terms of how money would come to Wales. I'm sure I'll revisit that when we debate the motion later on, but forgive me having a great dose of scepticism about the real intent of the Tory government in London.
Councillor Black.
Apologies, Councillor Mary Jones. It wasn't you.
Just to clarify, are we on question 5 now? Because I thought you called him to do question 5. That's why I was put my hand up.
Okay, we're on to question 5. Then that's Councillor. There's nobody up there, is there? No. Councillor Lyndon Jones.
Great, thanks. Thanks for the reply, Councillor Stewart. That was good to hear. I also saw the Facebook post that you'd put out, and that is good news, because I think, as you know, we have supported the Blue Eden project. We supported the previous project, but it didn't wash its face when it came to financially. And I understand that you're putting in a levelling up bid as well to help with the infrastructure for that project. Yeah.
To be fair to Councillor Lyndon Jones, he has personally been a supporter of both lagoons. However, his party has not, and his party killed the last proposal. The previous Secretary of State was very clear with me that he would not be prepared to support it for financial reasons and others. On a number of items which this region has taken forward, the blocker to their delivery has been the Tory government in London. So I'm very grateful for Councillor Lyndon Jones's personal efforts on this. I hope he's more successful in ensuring that as part of levelling up and others, he uses his party mechanisms to influence those in the Conservative Party who will be looking at the bids that have gone up there to help us be successful and get a fair crack of the whip, which we haven't had previously in any decisions made by the Conservative government in London.
Councillor Black.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Just a reference to the penultimate point of the answer. Detailed land transaction discussions are progressing with various landowners. I don't expect you to go into any detail, but can you clarify, are those discussions between the council and the landowners, or between Blue Eden and the landowners? Is it going to fall on the council to put together the land package which Blue Eden will then use, or are we relying on Blue Eden to do that? And will the council then require a budget for those land purchases?
No, the negotiations are direct between DST and the landowner. Obviously, we are aware of the discussions, and we hope to, encourage those partners to come to an agreement on that transaction.
So will the council need to, at any stage, rely on its compulsory purchase powers to put this together finally if there is problems?
That is not the proposal at the present time.
Move on to the next question. Is Councillor Wendy Fitzgerald.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I thank the Cabinet member for the response, and I wonder if he could elaborate somewhat on what exactly he means by project level. And this is in terms of when a consultation is going to be carried out. Is this, project level relating to the aspirational formative stage of the route, or is it going to be after some of the design work and feasibility studies have been carried out? I think this is, important information that we should be quite clear about. Thank you.
Chair, in Councillor Stephen's absence, he's unable to be with us tonight because he has a commitment. But just to say that I read that answer, and I think most people would, that the project level is the scheme level, and therefore, as we've said in previous discussions, that once we know that a scheme is being proposed, there is an element of consultation which takes place with the local communities on the details of the scheme. Obviously, it forms part of a wider network, and I think, as ex-councillor Mark Thomas has said previously, there has been previous consultation on the entire network. But of course, when we return to do the individual parts of that network, there are further consultations at a project level, or a scheme level.
Did you want to come back, Councillor Fitzgerald?
No, I think I'll leave it at that, because I think we could get into a very tricky argument if we continue on this line. Thank you, Leader.
We're coming up to the 30 minutes for the councillors' questions. I am willing to go an extra 5 minutes, being as we're quite early tonight, right? But I won't be going any longer. Okay. The next question is from Councillor Sam Bennett.
Thank you, Presiding Member, and thank you to the Cabinet Member for their response. Will the Cabinet Member ensure that future road closures that will make a community completely impassable mean that the road closures are only in place for a couple of hours, not whole days, so that businesses can continue to function? There were businesses in the Maritime Quarter that were not given sufficient notice of road closures, and that meant that they saw loads of cancellations, meaning they were losing fresh produce. And further to that, they've told me since that their business was down 35%. Surely that's not the aim of attracting people to the community, for businesses to struggle.
Everybody was written to. I think it's 40,000 letters went out to people about the closures, the road closures. If we're going to attract major events, it doesn't come without a cost at times as well to some people. This is the first year of the half Ironman. And we're well aware it was a bit controversial. There are lessons to be learned from it, and we will learn lessons. We will have it again next year, and we will have a different date to this year, although it will be very close to the date. This year it clashed actually with the Gower Show. Now, it won't be on the same date as the Gower Show next year, because the Gower Show is also very important to Gower and to the people of Swansea. But bringing major events to Swansea brings in a lot of money to the area. There wasn't a bed space that was empty in Swansea. There will be some people that will suffer from it. We've learned the lessons, and if people look at Tenby and the Ironman in Tenby the first year, there were problems there. People were calling for it not to have it again. By the second year, people were then desperate to have it again, and it's really well attended, the amount of people that come with it. We don't want to cause problems to anybody. So I think the lessons we will learn, we will make sure that we will try and learn from that and develop the half Ironman over the years to come to make sure that we have as little inconvenience to residents and businesses. The idea is to bring more business in. So I take your point, but there were some problems this year. Let's hope that next year there'll be less problems, and the year after perhaps very little, if no problems. But I think it is really encouraging, the feedback that we've had. We had a meeting with the community down in Gower, and Councillor Richard Lewis isn't here, but as he said, yes, there have been some complaints down there, but over 90% of the people have really welcomed it, and I think that was good. But we will learn from some mistakes.
McGettrick.
Yeah, you've covered some points around this, but I just wanted to highlight, I think we probably all did hear reports that were quite worrying about sort of carers, nurses and doctors having difficulty getting around. So will you work to ensure that these future road closures are very sensitively done so that they don't isolate those vulnerable and elderly residents specifically for long periods, and ensure that those teams are more caring about those residents, particularly care workers? There's a lot of vulnerable people in those areas. Thank you.
Yeah, we did talk to all the organisations and people, all the essential services, the carers would be able to go through. It's not straightforward at certain times, but we will learn from some of those mistakes, but generally most carers got through. I'm not saying all carers got through, but we want to see all carers getting through. It's the same, we have the sea one side, we have Town Hill, 600-foot wave cut platform. There's only one area along the Mumbles Road. The road race actually for the cycles is 70 miles, so out of the 70 miles, when people say, can you consult better? Trying to consult with everybody along 70 miles of roads is not easy. We did our best. The organisation is one of the best and recognised, one of the best organisations in the world, Ironman. That's why it's got the reputation. But we will, we've taken every precaution we can to make sure that carers can get through. If there were some that didn't, I apologise for that. We don't want to inconvenience anybody, especially people that need carers getting through. And if there's problems from this year, let us know the problems so that when it comes to next year, we can make sure the phone numbers, and beforehand, we can make arrangements that they can have access and change the times. Very difficult on a 70-mile route to get everything right in the first year.
Okay, this will be the last question, okay? And it's from Councillor Lyndon Jones. Thank you. Okay, that's the end of the council questions then. Okay, we move on to the next item, and that's the notice of motion. And I believe the leader is.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I wish I didn't have to bring this motion this evening, but I don't think we could let the sort of statements that have come out over the last month or so go without comment and without condemnation. As the motion makes clear, we absolutely deplore the statement made by the ex-chancellor and the current candidate to become the Prime Minister of this country, Rishi Sunak, when he said, and I'll quote him, "We inherited a bunch of formulas from the Labour Party that shoved all of the funding into deprived urban areas that needed, and those needed to be undone." Now, Swansea, if you didn't know, is a deprived urban area. So the Chancellor is standing up in front of Tory members in a leafy constituency in England, boasting about the fact that he undid formulas to take money off areas like Swansea. Now, how do I know it's Swansea? Well, as the motion says, I was involved in discussions with the UK government before the election, where we were given options, and I say we were given options, we were given a paper which had 3 options in it, but we had no choice over which options actually went forward. where the UK government were looking at funding for our region. What the Tory government decided to do, what the Tory ministers decided to do, was to remove need as a criteria from the formula. Just think about that. They were allocating money on a basis which didn't have need in the formula. So they're ignoring people who really need that extra help. And that's what we've been used to over a number of years from the EU funds, is the money going where the need was. And whether you agree with being in Europe or out of Europe, your view of what people should have in terms of help shouldn't be affected by that. But I think many of the Tory members are so blinded by the European argument that they wanted to move away from a formula that was actually right. Consequence of that for us and others in the region is that every single person living in Swansea and the South West Wales region will get £35 per head less funding every year from now on. That's what they've done. This year, that's £4.2 million less coming to Swansea. In RCT and Cardiff, it's even worse. The numbers are far more significant. I'll be at the Welsh Affairs Committee next week where we'll go through the details of what that means, but I'm happy to share that paper and our submission in detail with members so they can see the factual position of what this government actually does. And it's not as if they do it behind the scenes. They boast about it. They see it as a badge of honour that they are taking money off the most vulnerable in society. It is an appalling state of affairs. And as I said in response to Councillor Jones earlier, it's not just Rishi Sunak. This is endemic in the Conservative Party ministers. In a new book, The Independent Nation, Should Wales Leave the UK?, Welsh Secretary Alan Cairns admitted that the Conservative government never intended for decisions on the spending of replacement EU cash to remain in Wales. And I'll quote him. Boris was on board. When he came down to a hustings debate before the 29 election, we were briefing him. And I said, you will get the question about European aid. And in the manifesto, we've got to make the commitment that there won't be a penny less. Now, you remember that. That was said at the time. Wales will not be a penny worse off. Boris responded, but we want to control that, don't we? And I said, yes, but you can't say it. Otherwise, it'll spark a political debate in Wales. Because we haven't yet explained the commitment to the same money and how it will be used. This comment demonstrates, and this is the narrator of the book, that the Conservative Party knew full well what the reaction would be if the people of Wales knew that the plan was for funds that were coming to Wales to be redirected to the UK government and to England. Now, I don't know what the members opposite actually think on a local basis, but I don't know how any member elected for the Tory party in Wales can hold to that position. And we will be watching tonight when we call for a named vote, how you vote. Abstention is not an option. Show where you really stand. If you truly believe that the things that these people are saying are true, then vote for it. Vote against the motion this evening. But if you actually want to stand up for your community, if you really truly believe that the people you claim to represent deserve the funding that's been taken away from them, then you should vote with us for this motion if you believe that the motion is the right thing to do. But it isn't just those things that the Tory government, of course, have done. This comes in a long range of things that they've tried to do to Wales and succeeded in doing. £1.3 billion denied for the first tidal lagoon. And we get questions tonight, what are we doing on the second one, as if they had nothing to do with the failure and denying of the first one. Electrification of the main line to Wales, £433 million. Two prime ministers, two Tory prime ministers promised that electrification, and then when it came to it, said no. But yet, they're quite happy to put £100 billion into HS2 across England. And the overspend on HS2 is more than 20 times the 433 million that we would have required for electrification to have clean trains running more regularly into South West Wales. And it's not as if they're treating the other parts of the UK the same as Wales, because Northern Ireland and Scotland get a consequential from HS2. If Wales were treated the same as Northern Ireland and Scotland, we'd have over £5 billion as a consequential. Just think what £5 billion could do to the Welsh economy and what we could do to transform transport in our region. Our metro is estimated around 250 million. That is a tiny amount of that 5 billion that could transform the way in which people get around our regions and be a real stimulus for growth in South West Wales. And when we come to what this means overall, the estimates from Welsh Government, which have not been challenged by the civil servants in London, is that Wales will be nearly £900 worse off by 2025. The Levelling Up Department has confirmed that the 1.5 billion that was promised, we won't get until at least 2025, if we get it at all. And there's no guarantee of it being there after that. And there is no pledge to match that 1.5 billion original commitment to the inflation that we're currently seeing. So you can judge for yourselves what this means. To me, this is part of the great Tory robbery of Wales. They're picking the pockets of the people of Wales on a daily basis, and they do not care about our region or our city. And I've got to say, I find what people like Alan Keynes, Rishi Sunak, Boris Johnson and others do is immoral, unprincipled. They are consistent liars, they deceive, and they wear those principles as a badge of honour. And I think we should rightly condemn them for them. Please support the motion.
Yes, Councillor Lewis.
Thank you, Presiding Member. I speak to second the notice of motion. For many years, I've spoken with Labour-run English authorities, which have been dealing with the unequitable release of finance where Tory-led councils have been favoured financially over them. And I've empathised with them. And I felt fortunate to be part of a Welsh local authority and not part of that scene. However, we cannot ignore that not only has Wales been disproportionately impacted financially by Brexit, we were one of the largest recipients of the European Union funding. We've lost out on that. But also we've got the scenario now where we're facing a cost of energy crisis, a cost of living crisis, and this is a further financial blow to the people of Swansea. I think it's deplorable. I second the motion and I support the named vote. Thank you, Presiding Member.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I'm happy to support this motion. The thrust of the motion is absolutely right. And I think that the behaviour of the current UK government has been deplorable, the way they've handled this. In fact, right since the Brexit vote in 2016, we have been misled as to how the funds which have been coming to us by the EU will be dispersed in future and whether we'll be getting the same sort of quantity, which we're clearly not. And, you know, I think the motion has made clear a lot of this money is going to Mid Wales. It's going to Conservative seats. And, you know, if this council acted in the same way and only gave money to the ruling group seats, we would be up in front of the courts. We would find ourselves being castigated by the Ombudsman and the District Auditor and being told that what we were doing is illegal. But that is illegal. And in fact, from day one of the Welsh Assembly, the Conservative group have been trying to argue that the local government funding formula should be changed to take money from deprived areas and give them to rural areas like Monmouthshire and Powys and things like that. So it isn't just happening in England. My only problem with this motion is it's a bit confused. I think it's quite clear that that when Rishi Sunak made his comments, which as the leader has said, we're clearly we're clearly wrong and shouldn't be sanctioned. He was referring to the local government funding formula in England. So it isn't the case that money came from Swansea to Tory-held constituencies like Tunbridge Wells, because Swansea is funded by the Welsh government using a separate funding formula. So confusing those two issues, I think, means that makes it slightly confused. And I think when we come to write the letter to the Prime Minister, I think we need to be clear that we're and focus on the issue of the Prosperity Fund and the European funding, what happened there. But the principle is exactly the same. What has happened in England, where money has been taken from deprived areas in England and given to leafy counties like Tunbridge Wells and Surrey and whatever, is that is happening on a bigger scale in terms of the European funding, which is allegedly being replaced and through the Prosperity Fund. And clearly, as the leader has said, that money is being taken from deprived areas and given to other areas of Wales who don't need it in the same way that we do in terms of to level us up. And I think the question now has to be that when the new Prime Minister comes into office next week, is this levelling up agenda still going to exist? Is this levelling up fund still going to exist? I mean, we talked earlier on when we talked about Blue Eden about bidding to levelling up fund. So far, I don't think we've seen a penny of the levelling up fund money in this part of the world. And you have to wonder where that fund is still going to exist if either Rishi Sunak or Liz Truss take office then. But certainly we should be making it very clear that we are totally opposed to the way that this is being managed and the way that we've been misled since day one of following the Brexit vote in terms of how that money is being allocated. Thank you, Chair.
Good luck. Councillor Chris Holly, did you want to speak?
Peter said everything that we were going to suggest anyway.
Great, thank you, Presiding Member. I think in the motion you obviously refer to the UK Shared Prosperity Fund, you know, when I looked into that, there was 40% will be distributed to local authorities on the basis of population, 30% allocated using the same needs-based index previously used to prioritise places, but the 30% you talk about at the bottom end, which is based on the Welsh index of multiple deprivation. Obviously, we don't support Swansea losing out on cash without any doubt, and we will certainly be taking that up with ministers, with the Secretary of State. Sorry?
Well, I would say we'll vote with us tonight. Well, you know, there's a simple choice. You know,
no, we will do it our way. Thank you very much. I'm not playing games and motions. But one thing is certain, we will be taking it up with the Secretary of State and the Secretary of State for Levelling Up. And I know colleagues are already talking about the consequential about HS2, which I also support as well, because that is a huge benefit to England, of no benefit to us as such, unless we are travelling there. So certainly that is something we will be taking up. But you know, you mentioned as if the government aren't doing anything for Swansea. The UK government pioneered the city deal, which taken on by the council, and I welcome that and the work that council and Welsh government involvement. But nevertheless, it was Theresa May who came down here to Swansea to sign that and pioneered those deals throughout the country, the UK. The money the council has received so far from Levelling Up, and I know you've put in 4 Levelling Up bids with, 28.8 million, one of the bids, 19.985 million and 34 million are in at the moment. There's also, I'm also surprised that some of the other things that aren't mentioned, given by Rishi Sunak to Swansea, when he protected the 34,100 jobs during the pandemic because of the furlough scheme. And if that hadn't been done, the Swansea economy would have been decimated, like it or not. And we were all praising him at the time and in this chamber. Also, he supported 7,000 people who were self-employed in Swansea, worth over 60 million. And of course, the UK government delivered the vaccines. And of course, Swansea Council benefited from extra money given to the Welsh government because they were given an extra 2.5 billion coming into Wales. So you can't say that the UK government isn't giving money to Swansea. Also, you know, there are, during the course of 13 years of Labour government, Wales was underfunded by the Barnett formula, but Labour sat on their hands and did nothing. And it was down to Alan Cairns as Secretary of State to change that. So every £100 now that is spent in England on devolved matters, £120 is given to Wales, which is worth millions of pounds to the people of Swansea and of course Wales.
Point of information, that was actually Danny Alexander.
Well, coalition, that's great. Part of George Osborne's Treasury team. But also, you know, so that is vitally important. And the other thing, if you're really concerned about money being wasted and, you know, and we want it spent in Swansea, let's get on to the Labour government in Cardiff Bay and stop the 96 Senedd members. Let's get the money spent on education and social services and highways in Swansea, and that's certainly worth a letter.
Thank you. Councillor Phillips. Oh, sorry, is Councillor May still with us, please? No? Councillor Phillips then, please.
Thank you, Chairman. The leader of the Conservative group is, I believe, a decent bloke, but he's coming along as he's being required to, I suppose, as the leader of the Conservatives, is to come along and to defend the indefensible, riddling on the hook of something that is actually true. But he does say to us, in regards to voting, we're going to do it our way, which is what Sunak is doing, which is what Johnson and all the others are doing. They're going to do it their way. I suppose we should acknowledge, thank Sunak at least for being honest, unlike his current Prime Minister. But what we see here is merely a continued symptom of their disregard for those who aren't in their constituency, that is, those who vote or can be induced or brought to vote Conservative. A government, as is this council, is supposed to represent everybody, including those who didn't vote to them. It's entirely wrong. It entirely lacks ethics. It has no compassion for large parts of the country who, before he was made this mark, but certainly since, in regards to energy prices and so forth, are seriously wondering how they and their families are going to actually survive throughout the winter. I find it amazing that we can be having this discussion, that we are going to have a government, we're going to be led by either Sunak or, God save us, Liz Truss, who cannot decide, who cannot make a statement to give anybody any comfort about their future going forward. I do not know what a government and a Prime Minister is for if it's not to lead the country. And that means all of it, not just the bits that voted for it. The leader of the Conservative group talked about wasted money. Well, if the government was able to recover the money they wasted and bunged to their pals on the purchase of COVID PPE and gave that to Wales, frankly, I'd be quite happy.
Thank you, Councillor Phillips. Councillor Walton.
Thank you, Presiding Member. First of all, I'd just like to acknowledge the comments that Councillor Black made, in that if this is slightly muddy, we have got to make sure that any letter we write has got to be absolutely clear to make sure that we get across our argument. And I think, contrary to the leader of the Tories here, I think our argument is absolutely infallible. And I feel very, very distraught in having to even read the comment that Rishi Sunak came out with. I find it absolutely terrifying that we live in the UK now, where we've got a Tory government who seem to be blatantly proud of doing down people who are at the bottom, and they don't seem to care one iota whether those people live or die. Because we've been saying for years now that people are already making the choice between heating and eating. This has been happening over the last 10 years. This isn't new. What's going to happen is it's going to get worse, and more people are going to die. And I put that firmly and squarely on the Tory UK government. And similar to the comments that Councillor Phillips has made, I dread to think what's going to happen when either Sunak or Truss get in. I mean, Boris Johnson, I think, has been the worst Prime Minister I have ever known. And that is something for me to say that, because Margaret Thatcher was a despicable woman. But Boris somehow has managed to go beyond that, maybe based on all the damage she did. But I just despair, and again, can only echo what Councillor Phillips has said. These people don't seem to understand. They are supposed to be running and trying to do the best for the whole of the UK, because by my book, they're doing the best for a very small little coterie so that they can carry on living the life of Riley and sod everybody else. Thank you.
Leader, do you want to come back? Oh, sorry, Luke.
Yeah, to be honest, I wasn't going to speak on this, but I think I'd be letting my constituents down I represent if I didn't. What I would say is there's never been a better time for local government to do a job that we were all elected to do. Each and every one of us, whether you were Tory, whether you were Liberal, Independent or Labour, was voted on to make a difference in our communities. If we don't get the basic funding, Councillor Lyndon-Jones, if you don't, what I'm trying to say, if you don't listen, this is a very, very important notice of motion. And I actually believe there's never been a more important one. With the crisis that we are facing today, right? The people I represent can't afford the electric, can't afford to feed themselves. They rely solely on food banks. But food banks are drying up because the people themselves cannot afford to keep giving them. What I would ask Councillor Lyndon-Jones, when we get to the budget session, are we looking probably a 7 or 8% rise on our taxes, on our poll tax, or our taxes, sorry. What I would say, where are you going to be? Going to look for alternatives, look for this. We cannot deliver services without the funding that we think. And I'm sorry, we all deserve it, the people we represent, to support this motion, in my opinion. So it's a shame if we don't.
Leader, do you wish to come back?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just to respond to a few of the points there. Pretty hard to understand where Councillor Jones is coming from. Look, a national government has to invest in every area of the country. I think the point he's missing is that the split of that pie and the support is not being done equally, fairly, transparently. And actually, there are members of the current government that are boasting about actually being deceitful and lying and moving money from areas that need it into areas that don't need it as much. That is simply immoral. It is simply immoral. Yes, the city deal was something that the UK government negotiated with us. But of course, we've got to remember that that was something that we had to negotiate with them, and we've put up a significant more money than the national government has in order to get that deal. We would not, under the new terms set down by the UK government, what would have usually been a grant to that area as inward investment required a local contribution towards it. That's where they changed the rules of the game, making it even more difficult for areas to get funding. And I was grateful for the reminder that you weren't alone as the architects of austerity. There are colleagues from the Liberal Democrats who also went along with that mad idea that is a failed economic policy. And of course, these aren't the only things. You've got the £20 per week cut in universal credit, something that they're proud of doing. They thought was the right thing to do as we came out of the pandemic. He talks about Boris as if Boris was the person who delivered the vaccine. As Councillor King quite rightly said behind me, it wasn't Boris Johnson who delivered the vaccine, it was our wonderful NHS and the people in that service making sure the research was done to get the vaccines into the arms of the people that needed it. I think also, you look at in Liz Truss and Rishi Sunak, we've seen what they are thinking about. Liz Truss reversing back at a rate of knots where she actually proposed regional pay for all of our key workers, for all of our NHS, for all of our other public services, publicly suggesting that people should be paid less just because of the area they live in, and then targeting areas like Wales, like the north of England, and taking money off public sector workers in order to not pay them as much because they're not valued as much. We've had, 8 weeks now of a very self-indulgent election contest in the Tory party. Whilst everybody else has been worried about the cost of living crisis, the energy crisis, they've been there having a beauty contest between the two probably worst possible candidates for Prime Minister. And to Councillor Leslie Walton's point, Boris Johnson is the worst Prime Minister so far, because I think that whoever's coming next will be even worse. And I think, I think absolutely.
I don't know.
I mean, look, again, over the period of the Tory government over the last 10 years, we have seen an explosion in the growth of food banks across the UK. The poorest, even nurses on salary forced to go to food banks to feed their children. And again, you've got Tory ministers in UK government standing up and saying that's a good thing. It shows the spirit of our communities, completely missing the point of how much people are struggling, even when they're in paid employment. We've got 6,500 people on our waiting list in Swansea for homes. Why do we have that? Because a previous Tory government made us sell houses to tenants and then refused to leave the money with us so that we could build new ones to put those houses back. Again, depriving the local government here in Swansea the opportunity to replace housing. So, you know, I think we've had quite enough of the Tory government. I'm very happy to send a letter just to address Councillor Black's point. If you look at the way the motion is written and my comments, they are two separate statements. I condemned the statement Rishi Sunak had made around, you're quite right, the changes in the English formula, but also he has been involved in formulas that affect the allocations directly to Wales. And that's the point I was making in the paragraphs there. They are two consistent decisions that speak and go to the heart of how the UK Tory government is operating. I'm very happy to send a letter outlining all of what we've discussed tonight. If the opposition leaders and the leader of opposition and the leader of the Conservative group want to sign that letter in support, I would welcome their signatures because I think we need to send a strong, consistent message that the whole of this council rejects the way in which the UK Tory government is operating.
Leader, are you calling for a?
As I said earlier, Chair, named vote, please.
I don't need to stand up.
Thank you, councillors. I'm going to read out your names now, and if you're for the motion, simply say for. If you're against, say against, and if you're abstaining, please say abstain. Councillor Cyril Anderson. Councillor Matthew Bailey.
Abstain.
Councillor Matthew Bailey. Abstain. Sorry, I missed that. Sorry. Councillor Sam Bennett.
For.
Councillor Patience Bentu.
For.
Councillor Peter Black.
For.
Councillor John Curtis.
For.
Councillor Adam Davis. For. Councillor Phil Downing.
For.
Councillor Ryan Doyle. Councillor Mike Dirk. Councillor Kerry Evans.
For.
Councillor Chris Evans.
For.
Councillor Mandy Evans.
For.
Councillor Wendy Fitzgerald. Councillor Rebecca Fogarty.
For.
Councillor Robert Francis Davis.
For.
Councillor Nicola Furlong.
For.
Councillor Louise Gibbard.
For.
Councillor Fiona Gordon.
For.
Councillor Kevin Griffiths.
For.
Councillor Hayley Gwilliam.
For.
Councillor Joe Hale. Councillor Terry Hennigan. Councillor Victoria Holland.
For.
Councillor Chris Holly. For. Councillor Councillor Beverly Hopkins.
For.
Councillor David Hopkins. For. Councillor Linda James.
For.
Councillor Oliver James. Councillor Yvonne Jardine.
For.
Councillor Alan Jeffrey.
For.
Councillor Di Jenkins. For. Councillor Jeff Jones.
For.
Councillor Lyndon Jones. Councillor Mary Jones.
For.
Councillor Matthew Jones.
he's absent here. He's on holidays. He did give his apologies.
Okay. Councillor Susan Jones.
4.
Councillor Sandra Joy.
4.
Councillor Elliot King.
4.
Councillor Erica Kirshner.
4.
Councillor Hannah Lawson.
4.
Councillor Andrea Lewis.
4.
Councillor Mike Lewis.
4.
Councillor Wendy Lewis.
4.
Councillor Paul Lloyd.
4.
Councillor Michael Locke.
4.
Councillor Nicola Matthews.
4.
Councillor Penny Matthews.
4.
Councillor Peter May. Councillor James McEdrick.
4.
Councillor Hazel Morris.
4.
Councillor Francesca O'Brien. Right. Councillor Angela O'Connor. Councillor David Phillips.
4.
Councillor Sharon Philpott.
4.
Councillor Jess Pritchard.
4.
Councillor Sam Pritchard. Councillor Alison Pugh.
4.
Councillor Stuart Rice. Councillor Kelly Roberts. Councillor Bridget Rowlands.
Abstain.
Councillor Robert Smith.
4.
Councillor Andrew Stevens. Councillor Rob Stewart.
4.
Councillor Mark Tribe. Councillor Gordon Walker.
4.
Councillor Leslie Walton.
4.
Councillor Mike White. 4. Councillor Andrew Williams.
4.
Okay, thank you. That's 57 votes for the motion, no votes against the motion, and 5 abstentions. The motion is therefore carried.
Okay, everybody, that concludes your agenda for this evening. Thank you all for your attendance and safe journey home.
Thank you.
Ta-ra, thanks.